So a friend getting divorced can actually improve your marriage. Midswatch, Ryan, I'll cut right to it, boys. Friend dread, how my buddy's impending divorce improved my marriage. It's an old school one. A post that is in part a lesson, part encouragement, and part revenge porn. This is a follow-up on my post on prostitute game. Oh, it's the professor. Oh boy. I'm not gonna read that thing there, but what the hell was he even talking about with prostitute game? Oh boy. It's a long story, but the key part of it is a lot of guys did the math and they were like, how much does it cost to, keep a wife and lifestyle over 20 years versus hiring a prostitute 3 days a week? Turns out the prostitute was cheaper. I don't know what it's like in this economy. Not really the point of this one. It's just kind of a funny side effect or side note. Oh, and then the guy found out that once he was having sex more with that girl, that his wife started sleeping with him more. It's a weird thing. So that friend's now getting divorced. Who'd have thunk? His wife could not stop listening to the whispers. That's the post about the fear of missing out, where girls think about oh, there could be a life I could be living like my fun divorced friends right now, but I'm stuck with this guy. And she trotted off to her own apartment in order to take another ride on the carousel and find her yacht-owning billionaire with his 9-inch. All right, revenge fantasy stuff. Oh, she found a new Chad with a bigger dick. Oh no. He tried to talk some sense into her. His family tried. Her family tried. He sent her letters professing his love and fidelity. He's not using Dread Game, but the professor swears he is, including actually cheating. And she slept with him and continues to sleep with him even after moving out with desperate and pathetic passion. He tried to tell her the result of a 36-year-old hitting the market after 5 kids is not going to go well, and she didn't listen. Fun aside on this one. I talk about it in Dread. It's one of the 5 outcomes of Dread. And the one is obviously your wife gets more sexual, you have a better relationship, you're, a more praxeological man. But the other 4 states that everybody think of as failures are just different. There is, it's like a quadrant. Either you leave your wife or stay with your wife, and you sleep with your wife or you don't sleep with your wife, or status quo. One of them, get a divorce, still sleep with the wife. You plate your ex. It happens. It has its own list of things. It goes into a lot of depth. I won't waste your time by trying to do it here. It'll take me hours to get through all of it. But I would suggest, shameless plug, go get the book. 3 months, she is living alone, single bedroom apartment. She tried to come over to the house several times a day. She told my friend just yesterday that she would come back if he would do a bunch of things. He just laughed. He couldn't stop laughing. She's giving him conditions. He thought that she must be delusional or mentally ill, but he was past it. He disrespected her, and she dropped on her knees right there, blew him in the back room while he hit the bong. Then he pushed her over the counter and finished inside quickly before kicking her out of the house, telling her he was tired. Bit of a hate F, but whatever. Anyways, before the wife's car was out of the driveway, still probably smelling like her, he was texting this 28-year-old who had matched earlier for drinks. While on the date, his wife texted him 20 more times. 24-year-old dentist that he played a couple weeks ago texted him for a "what you doing" text, but he tells her that she is crazy, so he went next door, blah blah blah. Basically, he's living the bachelor life, and let me skip all the bragging parts here and get to the key part of it.
Name a bigger red flag than a white guy with a podcast. I'll wait.
I am not impressed. I will have you know, I'm 80% white. The podcast is goddamn good, and I don't want you anyway. You got random Iroquois art and not art on your walls. You're not my type, sir. Or madam. I don't know, you're allowed to say any more?
Okay, got to the lawyer's house. Oh, yeah, it's more of that. Jesus. There's a lot of this just bragging how great this divorced 40-year-old guy's life was afterwards. And I'll get to that in a sec, but you don't need to hear the stories, and I got monetization to worry about. Okay, as he drove away from all of this stuff in his truck, he listened to his voicemails from his wife. The first one says, "We have to talk." Then he laughed. So why am I telling you these stories? Because I also make sure to tell my own wife these stories of my friend's adventures. Can you guess her reaction? Let's just say her low sex drive is being solved. So, lessons learned. Post-war women with kids greatly overestimate their sexual market value and their marriage market value. Good-looking men with game who don't give an F, willing to date 20-year-olds and 30-somethings, absolutely will slay it in the market. And dread game works, and Millie does make women want to F. So, on that third point, dread game really works and makes women want to fuck. It can, but that's not the purpose of it. And this was like, the reason I wrote Dread was partially because he had actually written a book on Dread beforehand. Giant covert contract. If I do all these Dread things, then my wife will sleep with me. It's a horrible covert contract. It never works. And then stories like this get repeated along in like MGTOW communities and all that because it makes you feel empowered. Like, well, if I do this, I'll teach that bitch a lesson. It's like, it's not how it works. The purpose of Dread is to teach yourself not to be taken advantage of. Sexually, physically, emotionally, whatever. Sex is a trailing indicator of that. Now, it can be with her, it can be with another girl, but you can't treat it like, I will do this, then she'll want to sleep with me. Because as soon as you do that, the decisions you make are completely different, and then the outcomes you make are always going to be worse. Yes, women, after they get divorced, they think of their sexuality like a time machine. I was 18 when I married him, and I'm 18 20 years later when we divorced. And then she gets out there and it's like, I am not 18, and the guys don't care. So that's a girl problem. I don't really care. The best part is, too, good-looking men with game who are willing to do things are absolutely going to thrive. And that's for sure. You see all of this random cope stuff about, 40-year-old men and 50-year-old men and 30-year-old men, they're post-wall and nobody will love them and they're bald and they're ugly. It's like, dude, every single divorced guy I've had in my Patreon community was like terrified of this at first. And I kind of, walk them through basic game and stuff, how to act like a normal guy. And it's just, and there's even been girls in the chats going, yeah, it's just, the amount of fun men in my age are just gone. They're nowhere to be found. The good ones got snagged up. All that's left is the shitty ones. So yeah, every one of my guys, they're like, is in his 40s. Like, yeah, this chick was 25 and it was great. And this other one, he's like in his 50s. He's like, yeah, this chick was 30. Awesome. And they're finding the grass is truly greener on the other side. Even the guys who are still with their wives, a lot of it is just get a second opinion. Is it because you're not attractive, or is it because your wife's libido is shitty, or the baggage that she has for you? And then they find out when all of a sudden they just have to go through a little bit of charm, and girls are basically throwing themselves at them. And then they go back to their marriages and they think, why am I working so hard for this frumpy five? And it changes the dynamic from I'm trying to impress my wife to she needs to start impressing me. And it's all covert. Like, I don't mean covert contract. I mean as in the way you act expresses this sentiment without you saying a word. And it's these subtle little things that really make the difference. And this, I mean, it's a 10-year-old post, so it never really does match the refinement of what Red Pill has become now. But I mean, Red Pill's a living document. Things change and things get better as time goes on. So you should honestly expect a little bit of cringe in this older stuff. Anyways, Jack 10 rips into the professor. Dude, just get over your Madonna-whore complex already. Thinking poorly about sexually promiscuous women makes no sense. Mostly because you end up bifurcating women into sluts and good girls. And this is why so many of us end up in sexless marriages. We met a good girl and thought that because she didn't put out early gave her some sort of virtue. But often it just indicates a sex-negative attitude of woman conditioned from what sexuality she has that needs to be rationed and is only deserving of a man's attention, which makes her the exact kind of woman that weaponizes sex, sexually restrained and unadventurous, and will only enjoy sex when she would otherwise feel too much anxiety, aka dread, to not have sex. If you don't particularly enjoy sex with women that you don't like very much, then don't have sex with them. But you keep commenting about this and it comes across as a stupid amount of projection. It's like a post-coital thought like this. Why did you just let a man who didn't like you that much have sex with you? And what kind of whore does that? Now I think even less of you. But you know, I suspect you'd be even more annoyed of these women that just gave you a peck on the cheek and said thanks, but it's too soon for me to go back to your place we just met. Then you'd think, great, I just spent 2 hours listening to some basic bitch talk about her basic bitch stuff, and now I'm not even gonna get my dick wet. This is a waste of space. Even worse, and I'm sure this is a pretty far removed from your mind now, but worth considering, is that if you meet a fun, interesting woman that you could see yourself enjoying some long-term companionship with, so you won't ask her back to your place because you think that seduction shit is only for the whores you met through online dating, but you're really worried that you'll think less of her if she actually goes for it. And you like her enough that you don't want to think less of her. but that essentially locks you into this passive beta male approach, enjoying these dates and hiking and going to the museum, but don't be surprised if she says she's just not feeling with you and there's no chemistry. The common thread here is not sex, it's you spending time with basic bitches, so maybe do that less, and you don't need to worry too much about developing a taste for hate fucking. Absolutely funny. Off topic, I found this part funny too. So this other guy, Attacked by Fire, he was reading this whole thing. He's like, dude, where can I buy your book? I upvote everything that you write and I read. And then the professor chimes in with the link to his book saying, hey, thanks for the upvotes. And then the other guy's like, hey, we're not talking to you, buddy. No one said here they wanted to read your book. They were talking to Jack 10. See, he got upvoted because people like what he wrote. People didn't like what you wrote and downvoted you. Pretty simple. And then this one kind of infamous blue-pilled chick, she's called Atlas B. Shruggin. She was like this racist Jewish lady. It's just the weirdest thing. She's like, this is the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. They all hated the professor. And so these dunks like this. Anyways, the professor then goes to Deer and defend his book to these people. And he goes, I think you're overestimating the value that your book provides as well as the rancor it generates. Fair. Anyways, aside from the shitposting part that I found absolutely hilarious, there is some takeaway from this, but it's not what he's posting, and it's not the message, and it's not this. It's, yes, a divorce isn't necessarily the end of your sex life with your ex-wife. Yes, you will thrive. And it's the Rollo Tomassi chart where girls peak early and decline fast, the wall, all that stuff. Guys take a lot longer to peak, and it's a much more sustained peak. So if you're in your 30s worrying about being the lonely old man, don't. I guarantee you, a little bit of charm, a little bit of fitness, a little bit of style, you will have women falling over you. Yes, it takes effort. And the beauty of it is, younger guys are terrified of women. Terrified of women. They don't approach. They're afraid to make their needs known. They're like, as much as you're a nice guy now, they are another level. And so girls their age will be like, oh, it's so nice to meet a man who knows what he wants. Like, yeah, but I'm an asshole. She goes, yeah, but at least it's honest. You know what I mean? So take away from that. And also, don't pander to your audience. I know these revenge fantasy things sound great and everybody loves the idea of that bitch ex-wife being tossed a lesson. It really does feed into the Madonna-whore complex where there's two types of women. There's the virginal Madonnas and the whores of Babylon. And the problem with this is you're influencing your girls one way or another. And that's the one example here that really works well, where he said, you know, you like good girls. You don't want those whores. And yeah, she'll sleep with you on the first date, but then you don't respect her. And that's where you get all like, you know, goofy drama and you ditch her and then you go to marry the girl that made you wait 3 months. Now, some girls do that because I'm not a hooker anymore. Now I'm a nice girl, and they make you wait to make them feel more chaste. It's already pretty dysfunctional. But the problem is, by not immediately making your relationship sexual, you are friend zoning yourself. When you make it sexual, that's what that connection is girls talk about, that emotional high. That's because we actually get like dopamine hits from sex. And those dopamine hits are about as close as humans get to pair bonding. It's like a temporary high that you want to come back and get to more of them. So without sex, there is no relationship. And if you treat your girl like a good girl, and for some reason, maybe she's, 28 and she wants to settle down and have a family, she still likes you, gets together, you've just associated sex from her standpoint as being a whore and a hooker and a bad person. And so she actively represses her own sex drive to kind of make you happy. And it's the weirdest thing to consider, but yes, guys will normally, through validation and rewarding of the behavior that they prefer, encourage more of it. And by doing this Madonna-whore thing, you're encouraging your wife to be more of a frigid woman than of just a happy, fun, sexual woman. And I hate to say it, but yeah, you got to throw your judgment out the door. It doesn't matter what her notch count was beforehand, and this is going to be very controversial. It doesn't matter about how if she puts out on the first date or whatever. All that matters is how is she treating you. And that's the thing. If a girl has an ulterior motive of being with you, just date for 6 months. At some point, it will come out, and then you just make a decision in your best interest. This is why you don't have her move in for at least a year, because people have emotional, what do they call them? Psychological masks. They pretend to be what they think you want them to be, but they can't do it forever. After a year, they become their own true selves, and then you find, is this compatible with what I want? And then you can decide whether to stay or to go. But yeah, so definitely get rid of the Madonna-whore concept in your head. If a girl puts on the first date, all that means is you guys have a head start on figuring out if you want to be with this girl long term or not. And if she doesn't sleep with you on the first date, then it's probably a good indication that it's better off finding somebody else who will, because there is enough women who will put out early and often that you do not have to waste your time with the fixer-upper just because it's wearing a white wedding dress. You know what I mean? So I'll catch you guys in the next one.